Well, this all got started about a decade ago. I was on the leadership team of a church plant here in Kansas City, and we were trying to figure out how to grow our faith community. Specifically, we were reevaluating our guest follow-up strategies. You see, our attendance had grown a bit, but we weren't sustainable. And so after hours of deliberation among our leadership team, we settled on about 14 individual follow-up steps. And we worked together and everyone bought in and was even, may I dare say, excited about our plan. But as we wrapped up, our pastor asked a question I'll never forget. He said, okay, so who wants to tackle this? You could have heard a pin drop. It was silent. No one volunteered. The time requirement, it was just too much. Does that sound familiar to you? All we wanted to do was to connect more effectively with our first-time guests, but we didn't have the time or the resources to do it. And then, as I'm driving home that night, I got a text message from Southwest Airlines telling me that my flight for the next morning was canceled. So this got me even more frustrated. But then it hit me. If Southwest Airlines can leverage technology to get their message out, why can't the church do the same thing? And so began the journey of discovering what tools churches need and how technology can provide those tools to empower them to move from surviving to thriving. And we have found that technology can create a powerfully effective guest follow-up plan when combined with this 3-step framework that I'm going to share with you today. Hello, and welcome to today's keynote presentation. My name is Tyler Smith. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Text and Church, Engage's sponsor. I'm extremely excited and humbled to get to talk with you today, because today I'm presenting 3 ways to keep your guests coming back. And this is inspired by the boomerang framework, which I'll get to in just a minute. But before I get started, make sure you have your workbook downloaded. And inside your workbook on the My Keynote page, you're going to see a big orange easy button. And if you're at the kickoff session, you may have noticed my excitement around these easy buttons, but don't worry, I'll make sure to explain them in great detail. But all you need to know right now is that they are a huge time saver. So keep that page marked. Now, this boomerang framework, it's the culmination of everything we at Text and Church have learned from working with over 17,000 church leaders. Boomerang is an Amazon best-selling book that we launched last fall. And so for any of you who have purchased a VIP pass, you should have a copy now or it's en route to you. All of the strategies and the heart behind the who, what, when, where, why, and how of guest follow-up is laid out in this framework in hopes that it will serve as a very practical, proven guide. A boomerang comes back, right? Well, only when it's thrown correctly. In the same way, the guest experience is happening at your church. It's happening at every church in our world today. However, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a positive thing. And it definitely doesn't always cause guests to want to come back. What we've discovered, though, is a plan, a throwing guide, if you will, that when pieced together with time and intentionality will create a thoughtful, unforgettable experience that will keep your first-time guests coming back. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Guest follow-up is hard work. It's really hard. I know that. And most every church has plenty of room for improvement. In fact, the national average of first-time guests who return for a second visit is only about 10 to 20%. But this makes sense, though. Effective guest follow-up requires a ton of effort and long-term commitment. So I'm going to lay out step by step a guest follow-up plan that simply works. Not because I'm genius or have any crazy algorithms for this, but because I've gotten to learn from thousands of church leaders over the years, and we've figured out an effective way to engage with first-time guests. And I think it will help if you hear the bigger picture here. But before I dive in too deep into that, I want to lay some groundwork. You see, most people, when they come to your church for the first time, they're showing up for one of 5 reasons. This is known as the 5D theory. It's for divorce, or a death in the family, or displacement, they've moved, or maybe some type of disaster or development. They're showing up because they're real people with real lives and real hurts and real questions, and they're searching. It's hard to imagine that when someone looks up your church online, it's because they suddenly think, maybe I'll just try a brand new church tomorrow. The truth is, it's much more likely they're desperate, they're lonely, they're scared, they're hopeless. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's that people are seeking community and connection online. So the solution, we think, is relatively simple. Connect with them. From the moment they check you out online, you have an opportunity to make an impact on them. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tyler, genuinely connecting with all of our website visitors that we have, and in addition to our in-person guests and our live stream viewers, I don't have time for all of that. But what if I could tell you that I could give you some of that time back? That you could, in fact, improve communications at your church without spending more time managing data, adding more technology, and drafting emails. At Text and Church, we have landed on a solid, simple strategy. And that's what I'm going to lay out for you in this boomerang framework. All the things your church could be doing, including the use of technology, are proven ways to effectively connect with guests and members. And how to do all of them in a way that actually frees up more of your time to spend doing the things that got you into ministry in the first place. What started out as a way to help my home church turned into a full-blown follow-up system for first-time guests. It sounds like a lot, but it can be accomplished in just 3 simple steps: gather, connect, and build. These 3 simple steps are the foundational pieces to the boomerang framework that has helped thousands of churches all across the country see significant growth. Take Kevin, for example. He's a pastor at a small church in Missouri. He listened to a webinar that we do on these 3 steps, and he loved the concept. But worried that his church wouldn't be able to purchase our tool, he decided to just take the strategies that we teach and implement them himself. And in the first 3 to 4 months of doing this, he saw a 25% increase in guest retention. And after realizing that these strategies do work and spending way too many hours per week doing the follow-up himself, he decided to purchase our platform. He then saw another 28% increase in guest retention. That's a 53% increase in guest retention over the short term. But their long-term guest retention rate over 12 months also saw a rise, taking it up to over 30%, which is almost double the national average. Okay, so that's just one of thousands of stories that I could share, but these steps work. And it works whether or not you buy the tool that we've created to do it. The tool saves you time, but the strategies make all the difference. Now, today, I'm going to dive deep into the connect piece of the framework. That way you can walk away with a proven follow-up strategy and a calendar of when to send and what kinds of messages, and actually some message templates. It's incredibly practical and implementable. You're going to love it. But these steps build upon each other. So let's make sure we have a basic understanding of the first step, which is gather. Gather is the first step in our 3-step process. It's simple. Gather their contact information. This is crucial because this is what allows you to start building a relationship with people. Because that's the end goal, right? To be in relationship with people. But that's never going to happen if we don't have a way to get in touch with them. Especially as the shift towards online church continues, you may never have the chance to actually meet some people in person. But if you have their email address, their phone number, you can still connect with them. You can pray with them, point them towards a local ministry if they want, or be there when they are ready to attend church. Gather is a crucial first step in building genuine, long-term relationships with people in your community. An investment definitely worth making. And the best way that we see to gather people's contact information is the use of connection cards. And we have a whole lot of resources on this topic. Connection cards have been used in church since the beginning of time, but they're not all created equal. If you're interested in really understanding how to make connection cards work for you, then we actually have a boomerang course coming out later this year, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But the main gist to remember is that you need to have options and keep them simple. By options, I don't mean to just use a paper connection card in the seat back. Have a text-in option. Have a digital connection card that they can fill out online if they're joining you via live stream or on an iPad at your welcome center. There's a lot of options, so utilize as many as you can so that people can choose the one that's most comfortable for them. And then, by keeping it simple, don't ask for more information than you actually need. And I would argue that all you need for a guest first-time experience would be their name, their cell phone number, and their email address. The less you ask of them, the more likely they are to provide that information. The other really important piece of the gather step is the welcome talk. This is a point in your service, usually at the beginning, where you welcome new guests and invite them to fill out the connection card so you can stay in touch with them. And we actually have a whole proven framework for the welcome talk that we'd love to give you. So just click the welcome talk training link below and you can download that resource. All right, but let's get to the good stuff. The whole purpose of the gather section is to move us into the connection section. Connection can and should happen all over your church. during service, before and after, throughout the week. We in no way want to replace connections that happen organically in your community. However, you can't just have exclusively passive approach to connection. If you do, people will slip through the cracks. So let's dive into some connection strategies specific to guest follow-up. So take a minute. Think about what your church is already doing. How are you currently trying to connect with your first-time guest? And what is your system for getting them to come back? When you have people who are coming to your church for the first time, whether it's online or in person, many of them have an entire lifetime habit of not attending church. Or maybe they've just been out of the routine for a few months. Either way, they have started to fill that time slot with something else. Even if it's just a morning where they sleep in or spend time together as a family, they have a lifestyle change that they have to make if they're going to make a new habit of attending church. And this is really what the whole concept is based on. So this follow-up plan consists of the right kind of messaging delivered in the right frequency over the right amount of time. Think of it like a formula. Content plus frequency plus duration equals effective guest follow-up. As far as content goes, the key is to diversify. Obviously, if you know anything about what I do at Text in Church, you know that I think texting is a great idea. So check out some of these stats. 26 billion text messages are being sent every single day. Text messages have a 98% open rate. Email comes in second, closer to 20%. Texts are read within the first 3 minutes of being received. I mean, do I even need to go on? Okay, I will. If you were to try and connect with a friend over lunch, how would you set that up? Maybe a handful of you thought, oh, I'd give them a phone call. But I'm gonna guess that most of you thought, oh, I'd shoot them a text. Exactly. But why can't you do the same thing with guests at your church? You can. All right, but texting isn't the only way. We also recommend emailing, writing a handwritten letter, even giving them a gift. But before we dive into the 6 critical and effective steps to following up with a first-time guest, let's look at 3 huge mistakes that we see churches making in their guest follow-up efforts. So mistake number 1 is inconsistency. Inconsistency is one of the biggest mistakes that churches can make when it comes to guest follow-up. Like I said earlier, when a first-time guest shows up at your church, they have a lifestyle of not being at church. If invitations or introductions are sporadic and unintentional, they're going to get drowned out by the noise of life. Consistent communication is the key to showing a guest that they're important. We know you care, but they need to know you care. And the best way for them to know that is for you to show it. And mistake number 2 is that it's irrelevant messaging. There are 2 ways your church can be irrelevant in terms of your guest follow-up. You can be irrelevant in the content of your messages, and you can be irrelevant in the method of your messages. Irrelevant content is sending the singles ministry an invite to a married couples group. Yikes, don't do that. And if you don't know anything about the person yet, the content you should be sending them needs to be very basic. Come to service or come to our lunch and learn. As you get to know them better, that's when you can send more specific announcements that align with their interests and their needs. Irrelevant methods are ignoring people's communication preferences or not offering preferences at all. Don't just communicate exclusively via email because that's how you've always done it. Everyone prefers a different method of communication. So use a combination in order to stay relevant. For example, text messages, phone calls, and emails. All of those work together. The third mistake is insufficient follow-up. Insufficient guest follow-up is probably the most common mistake that we see. And we totally get why. Sending multiple messages to hopefully multiple first-time guests week after week after week, it can become a huge time-intensive workload. It's exhausting. However, insufficient follow-up is just simply noise. It's a quick email blast that people don't read. It feels automated and generic, and people see right through it. Also, as I've mentioned multiple times now, can you tell this is an important point? Many of your first-time guests have a life pattern of not being in church. We have to help them to overcome that. And 1 or 2 follow-up messages isn't going to impact that. When we talk about sufficient follow-up process, we're talking about at least 6 weeks worth of follow-up that includes text messages, emails, phone calls, handwritten letters, a gift. It's comprehensive. It's focused on relationship building. We aren't talking about sending text messages and emails out every single day, just simple invites, check-ins, reminders. Sufficient guest follow-up is investing in that person and doing your best to build a relationship with them. You know that easy button I was so excited about earlier? Well, All of the follow-up strategies that I'm talking about have already been built inside of our Text in Church platform for you. We're talking word for word messaging, a pre-built calendar. So if you are a Text in Church member, go ahead and click that button in your workbook and you will see it inside your account. And if you're not a Text in Church user yet, don't worry. You can still use the same strategies without the platform. It'll just be a little bit more time consuming, or you can take advantage of our gift to you, a free 60-day membership of Text in Church. You can get started now to see the impact that it can make on your ministry leading up to and even after Easter. But let's get back to these 6 follow-up strategies. The first one is to call them. Within the first week, after a first-time guest has shown up at your church, someone from your church needs to give them a call. Thank them for coming to your church. Let them know that you're there. If they have any questions, ask them if there's anything that could have made their experience better. You don't need to stay on the phone for a long time unless they're continuing the conversation, but have a purpose for your call. Here's an example. Hello, this is Tyler from City Church. I just wanted to call and thank you for joining us on Sunday. I wanted to see if you have any questions and invite you to join us again this coming weekend. Now, I know what you're thinking. No one calls anymore. I can skip this one. You're right. Most people in the younger generation don't like to talk on the phone anymore. But I urge you, don't skip this step. It is likely the person you're calling will not have your number and therefore they're not going to answer your call. But you have an opportunity to leave them a super thoughtful voicemail. All right, the second follow-up tool is email. Within the first week, yes, the same week as the phone call, send them an email thanking them for taking the time out of their weekend to worship with you. Give them the links to your website, your Facebook page, your podcast. Let them know that you are just an email away if they have any questions. And as a quick aside, personalize this email. It's okay to have a script to use here, but make sure to use their first name if you have it, and language that's informal. Connection is the goal. So make your email reflect that. So it could be like, hey James, Pastor Jason here. I'm so glad you tried out City Church on Sunday. I hope to see you again next weekend and get the opportunity to meet you. You can learn more about our church on our website or on Facebook, and here's our podcast. Take care, Pastor Jason Jones, City Church. Now, the third tool is my personal favorite, text messaging. We all text. Even my grandmother texts. 98% of texts are read. So if you skip out on this one, you're missing one of the biggest opportunities to engage with your first-time guest. The content doesn't need to be mind-blowing. Just a simple, thanks for coming, goes a long way. We've actually found that the more casual and conversational these texts are, the better. People like knowing that a pastor just had them on their mind and shot them a quick text message. We also recommend sending a text message on Friday or Saturday over the next 6 weeks to keep your church service front of mind as people make their weekend plans. You can see all of the message templates as well as the follow-up calendar that we created and a blank one for you to fill in to create your own when you click on the link below called the Ultimate Guest Follow-up Plan. You don't need to be a Text in Church user to access these. However, here's where we can talk about those easy buttons that are inside your workbook. If you're a Text in Church member, just click the Guest Follow-up Easy button and you'll have all of these messages downloaded automatically into your account. If you like that idea, but you're not yet a Text in Church member, hey, don't worry. As I mentioned earlier, we have a free 60-day membership available to every conference attendee as our way of saying thank you. And once you get your account set up, which takes less than 5 minutes, go click that easy button in your workbook to have all of those text messages, those email templates, they'll be added right into your account. Okay, the fourth tool is Facebook. We all know that Facebook is popular, but we also all know at least a few people who overuse Facebook. Come on, you know you just thought of some specific friend and chuckled a little bit. Hey, but I don't think that we actually understand how big Facebook is. So allow me to blow your mind. The last statistic that I read stated that 1/4 of the world's population is on Facebook. 1/4 of the entire world. Using Facebook thoughtfully as part of your first-time guest follow-up process shows that you are relevant and with the times. Within the first week of someone visiting your church for the first time, send a reminder to one of your staff to send them a friend request on Facebook. Ideally, this would be from a staff member who they've actually met or someone that they would have been in contact with regularly. For example, the pastor for adult discipleship or the children's pastor if they have kids. And then after their second or third week, invite them to join one of your groups on Facebook or to like your page. This will keep your content in their feed and hopefully get them connecting with others from your church. Facebook is an especially effective way to follow up with people if they haven't left any contact information. As long as you know their name, you can send them a message inviting them back next Sunday. The fifth tool is a coffee mug or a gift of any kind. Everyone likes free stuff. Even if gifts aren't your love language, I don't think anyone is going to not appreciate a gesture of thoughtfulness. So whether it's a coffee mug or a Starbucks gift card or a pen, having something for first-time guests to have in their possession that reminds them that they are valued and appreciated, it's impactful. Additionally, if you can afford to brand your gifts, people will use your coffee cup enough times and they'll maybe start to think, just maybe, I'll give that church another visit. You see, there are several ways that you can give gifts to your guests. You can ask them to head to your welcome center for a free gift. You can request their address on a physical or a digital connection card and then drop off the gift at their house. But keep it simple. It's the gesture that goes a long way. All right, and last but not least, our sixth tool is a handwritten note in the mail. You might be thinking, what's this texting guy doing telling me all about writing a handwritten note? Well, the truth is, with the increasing amount of media that comes our way through technology, a handwritten note goes a long way. People can appreciate the time and thought it took to write them a personalized letter. Again, not a stamped, generic thank you card, but a real thank you letter where they feel like they were worth some of your time. All right, there you have it, the 6 proven guest follow-up tools. Remember to download the calendar below by clicking the ultimate guest follow-up link beneath this video, and that way you can see every step that we recommend. And feel free to use the messages in this plan, tweak them to fit your needs and your context. And finally, that brings us to our last step, the build step, where you create a system utilizing all of these tools and timelines so that your follow-up happens no matter what. And it's all here for you. This is a time-intensive process, but I don't have to convince you how worth it is. Just make sure you designate hours out of your week for it so that it doesn't fall through the cracks. If you don't have any way to automate any of these steps, I encourage you to take advantage of the Engage Conference gift, where you can have access to Text in Church free for 60 days. Remember that the easy button that I was so excited about, all you have to do is click that orange button and all of these messages will automatically load into your Text in Church account. This will allow you to automate all of these personalized messages so they run like clockwork no matter what. And this will save you hours each week and stress of making sure that it all gets done. All right, well, thank you so much for spending time with me in this session.